The third Transjordan attack by Chaytor's force, part of the British Empire's Egyptian Expeditionary Force, took place between 21 and 25 September 1918, against the Ottoman Empire's Fourth Army and other Yildirim Army Group units. These operations took place during the Battle of Nablus, part of the Battle of Megiddo, which began on 19 September in the final months of the Sinai and Palestine campaign of World War I. Fought on the right flank and subsidiary to the Battle of Nablus, the third Transjordan attack began northwards, with the assault on Kh Fasail. The following day a section of Chaytor's force attacked and captured the Ottoman Empire's 53rd Division on the main eastwards line of retreat out of the Judean hills across the Jordan River. Retreating columns of the Yildirim Army Group were attacked during the battle for the Jisr Damia Bridge, and several fords to the south were also captured, closing this line of retreat, leaving detachments to hold the captured bridge and fords. Chaytor's force began their eastwards advance by attacking and capturing the Fourth Army garrison at Shunet Nimrin on their way to capture Es-Salt for a third time. With the Fourth Army's 8th Corps in retreat, Chaytor's force continued their advance to attack and capture Amman on 25 September during the Second Battle of Amman. Several days later, to the south of Amman, the Fourth Army's Second Corps, which had garrisoned the southern Hejaz Railway, surrendered to Chaytor's force at Zizur, effectively ending military operations in the area. The British Empire victories during the Third Transjordan attack resulted in the occupation of many miles of Ottoman territory and the capture of the equivalent of one Ottoman corps. Meanwhile, the remnants of the Fourth Army were forced to retreat in disarray north to Damascus, along with the remnants of the 7th and 8th Armies after the EEF victories during the Battle of Sharon and Battle of Nablus. Fighting extended from the Mediterranean Sea during these 7 days of battle, resulting in the capture of many thousands of prisoners and extensive territory. After several days pursuing remnant columns, Desert Mounted Corps captured Damascus on 1 October. The surviving remnants of Yildirim Army Group which escaped Damascus were pursued north during the pursuit to Haratan when Homs was occupied and Aleppo was captured by Prince Faisal's Sherifal Army force. Soon after, on 30 October, the Armistice of Mudros was signed between the Allies and the Ottoman Empire, ending the Sinai and Palestine campaign. Background: following the victory at the Battle of Jerusalem at the end of 1917, and the capture of Jericho in February 1918, the Egyptian Expeditionary Force crossed the Jordan River, establishing bridgeheads in March prior to the first Transjordan attack on Amman. These bridgeheads remained after the second Transjordan attacks on Shunet Nimrin and Es-Salt, when a second withdrawal back to the Jordan Valley took place from 3 to 5 May. This marked the end of major operations in the area until September 1918. General Edmund Allenby, the commander of the EEF, decided to occupy the Jordan Valley during the summer of 1918 for a number of reasons. A retreat out of the valley would further enhance the morale of the German and Ottoman forces, and their standing among the peoples living in the region, following their 2 Transjordan victories. So important did Allenby consider the support of the Hejaz Arabs to the defense of his right flank, that they were substantially subsidized. I think we shall manage the subsidy required as well as the extra £50,000 you require for northern operations. I am urging for another £500,000 additional to the £400,000 en route from Australia, and I am sure you will do what you can through the woe to represent the importance of not risking a delay again in the payment of our Arab subsidy. General Reginald Wingate to Allenby on 5 July 1918. The road from the Hejaz railway station at Amman to Shunet Nimrin remained a serious threat to the occupation of the Jordan Valley, as a large German and Ottoman force could quickly be moved along this line of communication from Amman to Shunet Nimrin. from where they could mount a major attack into the Jordan Valley. As Allenby explains, "I am not strong enough to make holding attacks on both flanks, and the Turks can transfer their reserves from flank to flank as required. The Turks have more of these, the 7th Army have 2,400, and the 8th Army 5,800 in reserve. I must maintain my hold on the bridges of the Jordan, and my control of the Dead Sea. This will cause the Turks to keep a considerable force watching me, and ease pressure on Faisal and his forces. It is absolutely essential to me that he should continue to be active. He is a sensible, well-informed man, and he is fully alive to the limitations imposed on me. I keep in close touch with him, through Lawrence. I have now in the valley 2 mounted divisions and an Indian infantry brigade. I cannot lessen this number yet." Allenby letter to Wilson, 5 June 1918. By July, Allenby was very anxious to make a move in September, when he aimed to capture Tulkarm, Nablus and the Jisr ed-Damiyeh bridge across the Jordan River. He stated, "The possession by the Turks of the road Nablus-Jisr ed-Damiyeh Salt is of great advantage to them, and, until I get it, I can't occupy Salt with my troops or the Arabs." He hoped the capture of this important Ottoman line of communication from Nablus along the Wadi Farah to the Jordan River at Jisr ed-Damiyeh and onto Salt would also encourage both my own new Indian troops and my Arab allies' EEF front line. From the departure of the Australian Mounted Division in August, steps were taken to make it appear the valley was still fully garrisoned. On the 11th of September, the 10th Cavalry Brigade, which included the Sunday Horse, left the Jordan Valley. They marched via Jericho, 19 miles to Talat Adum, then a further 20 miles to Enab, reaching Ramla on the 17th of September in preparation for the beginning of the Battle of Megiddo. Chaytor's force held the right flank from their junction with the 20th Corps in the Judean Hills 8 miles northwest of Jericho, across the Jordan Valley, and then southwards through the Gorariya and Aya bridgeheads to the Dead Sea. This area was overlooked by well-sighted Ottoman or German long-range guns and an observation post on El Hord. Ottoman front line. The Ottoman front line had been strengthened after the second Transjordan attack. It began in the south where Ottoman cavalry guarded tracks to Madaba before continuing with strongly wired entrenchments. In front of these, advanced posts extended from the foothills opposite the ford across the Jordan River at Makadet Hijla to about 4 miles north of the Jericho to Salt Road. The road had been cut at the Gorariya Air Bridge before the first Transjordan attack, in the vicinity of Shunet Nimrin. The front line was strengthened by advanced posts which were also wired on the left flank at Qabr Said, Kh. El Kufrain and Qabr Mujahid. From their right flank in the foothills, a wired line of redoubts and trenches facing south ran from 8,000 yards north of Shunet Nimrin, across the Jordan Valley to the Jordan River, 1,000 yards south of the Ashur ford. This line was continued west of the river by a series of individual, wired-in redoubts with good fields of fire, then as a series of trenches and redoubts along the northern or left bank of the Wadi Melaha. These were followed by a series of trenches and redoubts towards Baka Ridge which were entrenched, but not wired. A strong advanced position of well-built sangars and sikh, which were wired in, was held at Bagalat. Baka Ridge in the Judean Hills was situated to the west of the salient at El Mutalib, which was held by the EEF. The Ottoman front line was supported by entrenched positions on Red Hill beside the Jordan River, which was also the site of their main artillery observation point. Battle of Megiddo, 19 to the 20th of September. During the first 36 hours of the Battle of Megiddo, between 4:30 on the 19th of September and 1700 on the 20th of September, the German and Ottoman front line had been cut by infantry of the EEF's 21st Corps. This allowed the cavalry of the Desert Mounted Corps to pass through the gap and began their ride towards their objectives at Afullah, Nazareth, and Basin. The two Ottoman armies were left without effective communications, and so could not organize any combined action against the continuing onslaught by the British Empire infantry in the Judean hills. The Ottoman 7th and 8th armies were forced to withdraw northwards along the main roads and railways from Tulkarm and Nablus, which converged to run through the Dothan Pass to Jenin on the Istrialone plain. There, retreating columns from these two Ottoman armies would be captured during the evening of the 20th of September by the 3rd Light Horse Brigade, who already occupied the town. Liman von Sanders escapes. Otto Liman von Sanders, the commander of the Yildirim army group, was forced out of his headquarters at Nazareth during the Battle of Nazareth on the morning of the 20th of September by elements of the 5th Cavalry Division. He drove via Tiberias and Samak, where he alerted the garrisons to arrive at Daraa on the morning of the 21st of September, on his way to Damascus. At Daraa, Liman von Sanders received a report from the 4th Army, which he ordered to withdraw to the Daraa to Irbid line without waiting for the troops which garrisoned the southern Hejaz. Prelude. Chaytor's force. While the battles of Sharon and Nablus were taking place, it was necessary to deploy a strong force to defend the right flank of the Desert Mounted Corps, the 21 and the 20th Corps fighting from the Mediterranean coast and into the Judean hills. Their right flank in Jordan Valley was protected by Chaytor's force from the threat of a flanking attack by the Ottoman 4th Army. This composite force, commanded by Major General Edward Chaytor, has been described by Boas nearly equivalent to 2 divisions, being a reinforced, mounted infantry division of 11,000 men. By the end of operations on the 30th of September, Chaytor's force consisted of 8,000 British, 3,000 Indian, 500 Egyptian Camel Transport Corps troops, medical support in addition to the Anzac Mounted Division's medical units, the 1/1 of a stone Welsh and the 157th Indian Field Ambulances, the Anzac Field Laboratory, and a new operating unit formed from personnel of the 14th Australian General and the 2nd Stationary Hospitals, were attached to Chaytor's force. A receiving station was formed from the immobile sections of Light Horse and Mounted Rifle Brigades Field Ambulances, a section from the 1/1 of a stone Welsh and the 157th Indian Field Ambulances with an operating unit, the Anzac Field Laboratory, and a detachment from an Egyptian hospital. This receiving station took over the site near Jericho, occupied by the main dressing station during the 2 Transjordan attacks, which could accommodate 200 patients in mud huts, 400 patients in tents, and 700 patients in the abandoned Desert Mounted Corps headquarters. Air support. The Royal Air Force's 5th Wing, headquartered at Ramla, deployed one flight of the No. 142 Squadron RAF on the 18th of September to Chaytor's force. The flight was based at Jerusalem, with responsibility for cooperation with artillery, contact patrols, and tactical reconnaissance up to 10,000 yards in advance of Chaytor's force. No. 1 Squadron, Australian Flying Corps, operating Bristol fighters, was to carry out bombing and strategic reconnaissance missions, provide a general oversight of the whole Megiddo battlefield, and report all developments. Meanwhile, Nos. 111 and 145 squadrons, which were equipped with SE-5 aircraft, were to constantly patrol over Jenin Aerodrome throughout the day to bomb and machine gun all targets in the area, and prevent any aircraft from taking off. Echo DH-9 aircraft from No. 144 Squadron were to bomb the Afula telephone exchange and railway station, the Mesoudieh Junction railway lines, and the Ottoman 7th Army headquarters and telephone exchange at Nablus. The newly arrived Handley Page bomber, armed with 16,112-pound bombs and piloted by the Australian Ross Smith, was to support No. 144 Squadron's bombing of Afula. Jordan Valley deployments. Chaytor took command of the Jordan Valley garrison on 5 September 1918. The right sector, under the command of Brigadier General G. L. Ryrie, was held by the 2nd Light Horse Brigade and the 20th Indian Brigade. The left sector, under the command of Brigadier General W. Meldrum, was held by the New Zealand Mounted Rifles Brigade, the 38th Battalion Royal Fusiliers, and the 1st and 2nd Battalions British West Indies Regiment, supported by a Field Artillery Battalion and Indian Mountain Battery. The 39th Battalion Royal Fusiliers formed the sector reserve, while the 1st Light Horse Brigade was in force reserve, while the Ottoman Fourth Army continued to hold the eastern side of the Jordan Valley, Salt, Amman and the Hejaz Railway. Chaytor's smaller force was to continue the EEF's occupation of the Jordan Valley. As soon as possible, Chaytor's force was to advance northwards to capture the Jisr Ed Damier Bridge, which would cut a main line of retreat for the Ottoman 7th and 8th Armies. This was also a main line of communication between the two armies west of the Jordan River in the Judean Hills with the Fourth Army in the east. The expectation was that the attacks on the 8th Army by the 21 and Desert Mounted Corps, and the start of the Battle of Nablus attacks on the 7th Army, would force the 4th Army to withdraw northwards along the Hejaz Railway to conform with the withdrawals of the 7th and 8th Armies. Preliminary operations. Lieutenant General Harry Chauvel, the Australian commander of Desert Mounted Corps, instructed Chaytor to hold his ground, for the present, but to closely watch the Ottoman forces during around-the-clock patrolling, and to immediately occupy any abandoned enemy positions. From the 16th of September, the Ottoman front line was closely monitored, while the New Zealand Mounted Rifles Brigade and the British West Indies Regiment's infantry battalions carried out demonstrations to the north on the western side of the Jordan River. Chaytor's force was prepared to exploit all withdrawals by the 4th Ottoman Army, including a third occupation of Salt and a second Battle of Amman. In addition to the close patrol work, demonstrations against Ottoman defences were made during the nights of 17 and the 18th of September, by the 1st Light Horse Brigade and a regiment of 2nd Light Horse Brigade, which rode out from the bridgeheads in the Jordan Valley. The Ottoman heavy high-velocity gun retaliated, firing shells on Jericho, and to the north of town on Chaytor's headquarters in the Wadi Nu'ayma. Yildirim Army Group. The Yildirim Army Group, commanded by von Sanders, consisted of 40,598 frontline infantrymen armed with 19,819 rifles, 273 light machine guns and 696 heavy machine guns in August 1918. The high number of machine guns reflected the Ottoman Army's new tables of organization and the machine gun component of the German Asia Corps. The infantry were organized into 12 divisions and deployed along the 90 kilometers of front line from the Mediterranean to the Dead Sea. The 8th Army from the coast into the Judean Hills, the 7th Army in the Judean Hills and towards the Jordan, with the 4th Army east of the Jordan River. An operational reserve was formed from the 2nd Caucasian Cavalry Division in the 8th Army area and the 3rd Cavalry Division in the 4th Army area. 4th Army. The Ottoman 4th Army, consisting of 6,000 infantry and 2,000 cavalry supported by 74 guns, was commanded by General Muhammad Jemal Pasha. The army was headquartered at Amman. This army was composed of the 8th Corps 48th Infantry Division, the Composite Division of a German battalion group, the Caucasus Cavalry Brigade, the division-sized Surstal Group, the 24th and 62nd Infantry Divisions, with the 3rd Cavalry Division in reserve. There were 6,000 Ottoman soldiers with 30 guns in the 2nd Corps, known as the Syria Group or Jordan Group, which garrisoned the Hejaz Railway along the line from Man southwards towards Mecca. Deployment. The 7th and 4th Armies touched at Baghalat, 6 miles west-northwest of Shirt. Both sides of the Jordan River were defended by the 24th Infantry Division and the 3rd of Cavalry Division, and both sides of the Goria's Salt Road were held by the 8th Corps's 48th Division. The Composite Division was on their left, while the Caucasus Cavalry Brigade and the Mule-Mounted Infantry Regiment held outposts extending southwards towards the Dead Sea. The Second Corps was responsible for some 200 miles of the Hejaz Railway. A strong detachment of about 7 battalions was at Man and about 8 battalions were deployed between Man and Amman. The 4th Army's reserve was formed by the German 146th Regiment, the 3rd Cavalry Division and part of the 12th Regiment at Es-Salt. The 4th Army strongly garrisoned Shunet Nimrin, the entrenched area in the foothills which had repulsed an attack by Chethwood on the 18th of April and a second attack at the end of April during the Second Transjordan attack. The 4th Army also held substantial forces at Amman, and guarding tunnels and viaducts along the Hejaz Railway near Amman.